Dairo Antonio Usuga David was born on September 15, 1971, in Equicli, northwestern Colombia. He came from a modest peasant family in 1989. At age 18, Usuga joined the Popular Liberation Army, a communist guerrilla group. His mother said it was all there was and he went with them. The EPL signed a peace agreement in 1991. Usuga was 20 years old, but he didn't go back to farming, he went deeper into crime. Usuga joined the United Self-Defenses of Colombia, a far-right paramilitary group and drug trafficking organization. In 2005, Usuga began working for Daniel Rendon Herrera, leader of Los Eurobeos. In 2009, Herrera was captured. Usuga and his brother Giovanni took control. They renamed it Clan del Golfo. Usuga became the leader. His nickname was Otonio. Usuga transformed Clan del Golfo into one of the largest drug cartels in the world. The organization had about 3,800 members operating in 12 of Colombia's 32 provinces. Between June 2003 and October 2021, Usuga exported multi-ton shipments of cocaine from Colombia to Mexico and Central America for importation into the United States. Some reports say he trafficked 180 to 200 tons per year. Prosecutors estimated Usuga made at least $216 million. Clan del Golfo used extreme violence. Usuga commanded an army of sicarios. They carried out incidents, assaults, kidnappings, torture, and executions. Usuga ordered the ruthless execution of Colombian law enforcement, military officials, and civilians. One individual was tortured, buried alive, and beheaded on Usuga's orders. Usuga put bounties on police officers and soldiers. More than 200 members of Colombia's security forces were taken from life under his leadership. Two officers were Milton Elicer Flores Arcilla and John Gelber Rojas Colmenares. Rojas Colmenares passed away in 2017. His widow said Usuga took away the chance she had of growing old with the love of her life. Usuga was also accused of sexually abusing children and recruiting minors into the cartel. They forced young boys, some as young as 12 or 13, to become soldiers. President Bovan Duque called Usuga a murderer of social leaders, an abuser of boys, girls, and adolescents, and a murderer of police officers. For over a decade, Usuga evaded capture. He moved constantly through jungle safehouses. The United States government placed a $5 million bounty on his head. The Colombian government offered $800,000. On October 23, 2021, Colombian military and law enforcement launched Operation Osiris. Over 500 soldiers, supported by 22 helicopters, raided Usuga's hideout in Antioquia province near the border with Panama. One police officer was taken from life during the raid. When soldiers cornered Usuga, he said 3 words. "You beat me." He was 50 years old. Usuga had been indicted in the United States 3 times. On May 4, 2022, Usuga was extradited to the United States. He was transported via NYPD helicopter to Brooklyn, New York. On January 25, 2023, Usuga pleaded guilty to 3 charges: engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise, maritime narcotics conspiracy, narcotics importation conspiracy. He agreed to pay $216 million in forfeiture. Through a court interpreter, Usuga said, "I apologize to the governments of the United States and Colombia, and to the individuals affected by the offenses that I have committed." On August 8, 2023, Usuga stood before Judge Dora Ela de Rosari for sentencing. The prosecution asked for 45 years. His defense attorney said Usuga received only a 4th-grade education and was pulled into guerrilla warfare when he was 16. Judge Rosari shot back that environment was not an excuse. She cited her own upbringing in public housing in the South Bronx. She told Usuga he had chances to leave this life behind. "And you didn't," she said. Judge Irizarry noted prosecutors proved Usuga had shipped nearly 100 metric tons of cocaine into the United States. She described him as among drug dealers who were more prolific than Pablo Escobar. She sentenced Usuga to 45 years in prison. She also ordered him to pay $216 million in forfeiture. Usuga was 51 years old. He will be 96 years old when his sentence ends. Usuga is currently imprisoned at ADX Florence in Colorado. He spends 23 hours a day in solitary confinement in a 7 by 12 foot concrete cell. Solid concrete walls, desk, chair and bed. The only window is a 4-inch slit. He gets 1 hour of exercise per week. All phone calls are limited to 15 minutes per month. Calen del Golfo still exists today but has fractured into competing factions. Usuga's brother Giovanni was taken from life in a 2012 police shootout. This is what happens when you choose the drug game. You start as a peasant kid, you move to a guerrilla group, you learn the drug trade. You rise to the top, you make hundreds of millions of dollars. You command thousands of soldiers. You think you're untouchable, but eventually, 500 soldiers and 22 helicopters come for you. You get extradited. You plead guilty. And you end up in a concrete box 23 hours a day for the rest of your life. Usuga terrorized Colombia for 2 decades. He caused countless individuals to pass away. He abused children. He flooded America with cocaine. Now he sits alone in the most isolated prison in the country. He will die in that cell, and the world will keep spinning without him. Tyler Davis Bingham was born around 1947 in California. He started as a petty offender, but when he entered the prison system, he discovered the Aryan Brotherhood, a white supremacist prison gang. Bingham rose through the ranks fast. By the 1990s, he was one of the most powerful leaders. He earned the nickname the Hulk because of his size and strength. Bingham and Barry Mills formed a 3-member council that ran the entire Aryan Brotherhood. They made all major decisions. They ordered incidents. They controlled everything. In 1989, Bingham and Mills ordered the demise of Arva Lee Ray, an inmate at Lompoc, California. Ray had violated Aryan Brotherhood rules. Aryan Brotherhood members cornered Ray inside the prison. They used prison-made shanks. They stabbed Ray multiple times. He passed away from his wounds. The most notorious offense came in 1997. Bingham and Mills wanted to incite a race war inside the federal prison system. The plan was to cause death to black inmates at multiple prisons, create chaos, force white inmates to join the Aryan Brotherhood. In 1997, Bingham sent a secret message from ADX Florence to Aryan Brotherhood members at Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. The note was written in invisible ink made from urine. When inmates heeded the paper, the message appeared: go to war with blacks, cause death to black inmates, start a race riot. In 1997, Aryan Brotherhood members at Lewisburg followed the orders. They made shanks. They identified their targets. Then they attacked. 2 black inmates, Frank Joyner and Abdul Salam, were members of the rival DC Blacks gang. Aryan Brotherhood members sneaked into their cell block. They stabbed Joyner multiple times. He passed away. They stabbed Salam multiple times. He passed away too. Both individuals were taken from life in their own cells. The race war had begun. In 2002, federal authorities arrested 40 Aryan Brotherhood members in coordinated raids. The indictment was 140 pages long. It detailed 32 incidents over 3 decades. Bingham and Mills were charged with racketeering, conspiracy to cause death, incidents that caused death, drug trafficking, extortion, and firearms violations. More than a dozen people faced death. The trial began in March 2006 in Santa Ana, California. It lasted 4 months. More than 60 witnesses testified. Prosecutors presented mountains of evidence: letters written in code, financial records, wiretap recordings. On July 28, 2006, the jury found all 4 defendants guilty. Bingham was convicted of racketeering, conspiracy to cause death, incidents that caused death, including Arva Lee Ray, Frank Joyner, and Abdul Salam, and violent crime in aid of racketeering. The death penalty phase began on August 15, 2006. Prosecutors said Bingham ordered the demise of 5 people, and 2 were taken from life. After weeks of testimony, the jury deadlocked on death. On September 15, 2006, Judge David O. Carter sentenced Bingham to 3 consecutive life terms without parole. Mills received 4 consecutive life terms. The judge said it's almost inconceivable that these crimes spanned over 30 years. Federal prosecutors asked to isolate the men from almost all human contact for the rest of their lives. The judge agreed. Bingham is now approximately 77 years old. He is imprisoned at ADX Florence in Colorado. He spends 23 hours a day in solitary confinement in a 7 by 12-foot concrete cell. Solid concrete walls, desk, chair and bed. The only window is a 4-inch slit. He gets 1 hour of exercise per week. All phone calls are limited to 15 minutes per month. He has almost no contact with the outside world. His fellow commissioner Barry Mills passed away at ADX Florence in 2018 at age 70. Bingham will die in that concrete cell. This is what happens when you build a criminal empire on hate and violence. The concrete cell becomes your tomb. He will die alone, forgotten. This is the price of hate. Joaquín Archivaldo Guzmán Loera was born on April 4, 1957, in Alatuna, Badiraguato, o Sinaloa, Mexico. He grew up dirt poor in the mountains. No electricity, no running water, no future. He started selling oranges as a boy. His father beat him. He dropped out of school in 3rd grade. By age 15, Guzmán was growing marijuana and opium poppies. El Chapo means shorty in Spanish. Guzmán stood only 5 feet 6 inches tall, but what he lacked in height, he made up for in ambition and violence. In the 1980s, Guzmán worked for Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, the boss of the Guadalajara cartel. He started as a driver and bodyguard, but he learned logistics. He earned the nickname El Rapido because he transported cocaine faster than anyone else. When Felix Gallardo was arrested in 1989, Guzmán took control of the Sinaloa region. He formed the Sinaloa cartel with Ismael Zambada and Juan José Esparragoza. Colombian cartels, like Pablo Escobar's Medellín cartel, were getting destroyed. Escobar was taken from life in 1993. The Colombians retreated. Guzmán and the Sinaloa cartel became the middlemen, and they made billions. Between 1989 and 2014, Guzmán ran the Sinaloa cartel into the most powerful drug trafficking organization in the world. The cartel smuggled over 1 million kilograms of cocaine, marijuana, methamphetamine, and heroin into the United States. It's over 2.2 million pounds of drugs. Forbes magazine estimated Guzmán's net worth at $1 billion in 2009. By 2012, the United States Department of the Treasury called Guzmán the world's most powerful drug trafficker. The Sinaloa cartel used professional hit squads. They tortured people. They beheaded enemies. They hung bodies from bridges. Some estimates say hundreds were taken from life. The Department of Justice says thousands. In 1993, Guzmán was linked to the incident involving Cardinal Posadas Ocampo. The cardinal was shot and taken from life in his car near the Guadalajara airport. Rival cartel hitmen mistook the cardinal for El Chapo. They opened fire. The cardinal passed away. 7 other people were also slain. On June 9, 1993, Guzmán was arrested in Guatemala and extradited to Mexico. He was convicted and sentenced to 20 years. He was sent to Puente Grande prison, but Guzmán didn't stop. He ran the Sinaloa cartel from his cell. Prison guards acted like servants. Guzman lived like a king behind bars. On January 19, 2001, Guzman escaped. He hid inside a laundry cart and rolled right out of the prison. Guards had been bribed. Guzman spent the next 13 years on the run. He became the #1 fugitive in the world. During those 13 years, the violence exploded. Guzman went to war with rival cartels. The streets of Mexico ran red with blood. In 2004, Guzman ordered the demise of Rodolfo Carrillo Funes. In 2008, Roberto Velasco Bravo and Rafael Ramirez Jaime were also slain under Guzman's orders. Guzman laundered over $14 billion in drug proceeds. On February 22, 2014, Guzman was finally captured. Mexican Marines raided a hotel in Mazatlan, Sinaloa. He was sent to Altiplano Prison, Mexico's most secure facility, but Guzman already had a plan. His wife Emma Coronel Pero carried messages to his sons. They purchased land near the prison. They rented a warehouse. They smuggled a smartwatch into the prison, so Guzman could provide GPS coordinates. Then they started digging. The tunnel took over a year to build. It was 1.5 kilometers long, nearly a mile. It went 10 meters underground. It had lighting, ventilation, and a modified motorcycle on rails. On July 11, 2015, Guzman made his move. Surveillance footage shows him pacing in his cell around 8:52 p.m. He walks to the shower area, he bends down, and he vanishes. There was a 50 by 50 centimeter opening in the floor. Guzman climbed down a wooden ladder into the tunnel. At the bottom, a motorcycle with a driver was waiting. They rode through the mile-long tunnel. The tunnel ended inside a half-built house. An ATV picked him up, then a plane flew him to Sinaloa. He was free again. Guzman spent 6 months on the run. On January 8, 2016, Mexican Marines tracked him down in Los Mochis, Sinaloa. A massive gunfight broke out. 5 cartel members were taken from life. 1 Marine passed away. Guzman escaped through a drainage tunnel, but was caught trying to steal a car. This time, Mexico extradited him to the United States. On January 19, 2017, exactly 16 years after his first escape, Guzman was flown to New York City. He faced 10 counts, including being a principal leader of a continuing criminal enterprise, narcotics trafficking, using firearms, and conspiracy to cause death. The trial began in November 2018. It lasted 3 months. More than 60 witnesses testified. 1 bodyguard testified. Guzman personally beat 2 people completely like ragdolls, then shot them in the head and ordered their bodies thrown on a fire. On February 12, 2019, the jury found Guzman guilty on all 10 counts. On July 17, 2019, Judge Brian M. Cogan sentenced Guzman to life in prison, plus 30 years. The judge also ordered him to pay $12.6 billion in forfeiture. Guzman was silent at sentencing. He didn't speak. He showed no emotion. Guzman is now 67 years old. He is imprisoned at ADX Florence in Colorado. He spends 23 hours a day in solitary confinement in a 7 by 12 foot concrete cell. Solid concrete walls, desk, chair and bed. The only window is a 4-inch slit. He gets 1 hour of exercise per week. All phone calls are limited to 15 minutes per month. He will never leave that cell. He will die there, alone. His wife Emma Coronel was arrested in 2021 and sentenced to 3 years for helping him run his empire and plotting his 2015 escape. She was released in 2023. His sons took over the Sinaloa cartel. On January 5, 2023, authorities arrested his son Ovidio. The operation turned into a war. 29 people were taken from life, including 10 soldiers, but authorities got him. He was extradited in September 2023. This is what happens when you choose the drug game. You make billions. You escape from prison. Twice. You think you're untouchable. But eventually, the walls close in. The Marines raid your hideout. The government extradites you. A jury convicts you, and you end up in a concrete box 23 hours a day for the rest of your life. No tunnels, no motorcycles, no escapes, just silence and concrete. GUZMÁN caused thousands of individuals to pass away. He corrupted entire governments. He destroyed communities. Now he sits alone in the most isolated prison in America. He will die in that cell, and the world will be better for it. Ronald Herron was born on March 30, 1982, in Brooklyn, New York. He grew up in the Gowanus houses. At age 12, he watched his childhood friend get shot and pass away by police. At 14, he was arrested for armed robbery and sent to Rikers Island. He served 4 years. When he got out, he went right back to the streets. By 1998, Herron built his gang called the Murderous Mad Dogs, a blood set. The Gowanus houses and Wyckoff Gardens became his territory. His gang controlled cocaine, heroin, and crack. Crime in Gowanus was 3 times higher than other projects. Herron was the reason. On June 16, 2001, Herron caused Frederick Brooks to pass away. He was arrested, but when witnesses refused to testify, he was acquitted in 2002. He pleaded guilty to drug trafficking and was sentenced to 6 years. While locked up, he became a high-ranking Bloods member. In July 2007, Herron was released. He came back to reclaim control and become a rapper. He called himself Rara Diggs. He collaborated with Uncle Murder and Waka Flocka Flame. In March 2010, he started posting videos to YouTube. His song Eulogy got over 1.1 million views. But his music was evidence. He bragged about his offenses in his songs. He showed guns and drugs. He said he beat a body. On May 9, 2008, Richard Russo was shot and passed away in an elevator at Doubled Wyckoff Gardens. In 2009, Herron chased rival drug dealer Victor Zapata through the courtyard of Wyckoff Gardens. Zapata tried to run. He didn't make it. Herron caused him to pass away. 3 individuals gone. 3 families destroyed. On October 5, 2010, Herron was arrested outside a nightclub. Police found a loaded firearm and body armor. He was wearing military-style bulletproof armor. In 2012, federal authorities indicted Herron on 23 counts, including racketeering, 3 incidents that caused death, attempted incidents, robbery, firearms, and drug trafficking. More than 50 witnesses testified. Prosecutors used Herron's own rap songs and videos as evidence. His defense said rappers exaggerate. The jury didn't buy it. On June 26, 2014, after a month-long trial, the jury convicted Herron on all counts. At sentencing on April 2, 2015, Herron told the judge they painted him as the devil. Judge Nicholas Garofis said Herron was intelligent and articulate but chose to lead a criminal organization. The judge sentenced him to 12 consecutive life terms plus 105 years. Herron said he was only going to pass away once. In early 2015, officers found razor blades and a mobile phone hidden under his mattress. Even behind bars, he wouldn't follow rules. After sentencing, Herron was transferred to ADX Florence in Colorado. He spends 23 hours a day in a 7 by 12-foot concrete cell. Solid concrete walls, desk, chair, and bed. The only window is a 4-inch slit. He gets 1 hour of exercise per week. On February 14, 2019, his appeal claiming First Amendment violations was rejected. The court said the videos were relevant evidence. Herron is now 43 years old. He will spend the rest of his life in that concrete cell. No parole, no music videos, no flexing, just 23 hours a day in a box. This is what happens when you glorify violence and make it your life. The concrete walls close in, the music stops, and you die alone in a cell. Alfredo Beltran Leyva was born on January 21, 1971, in La Palma, Badiraguato, Sinaloa, Mexico. He grew up in the same small town as JOAQUÍN El Chapo Guzmán. Badiraguato is isolated, poor and for decades the birthplace of Mexico's most powerful drug traffickers. Beltran Leyva earned the nickname El Mocomo. In northwestern Mexico, a mocomo is a big red desert ant. It's small but it bites hard. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Beltran Leyva and his brothers started working with GUZMÁN and the Sinaloa cartel. Beltran Leyva married one of GUZMÁN's cousins. Between 2000 and 2012, Beltran Leyva was responsible for smuggling at least 27.9 tons of narcotics into the United States. That's over 55,800 pounds of drugs. He made at least $529 million. The Beltran Leyva organization commanded hit squads called Los Negros. These were professional assassins with AK-47 rifles, grenades, and heavy weapons. Some were former Mexican soldiers and police. The cartel used extreme violence. They tortured people. They dismembered bodies. They hung victims from bridges as warnings. They caused countless individuals to pass away. In 2002, GUZMÁN met with Ismael Zambada and others. Together with the Beltran Leyva brothers, they formed the Federation or Blood Alliance. This was the most powerful drug trafficking organization in Mexico. But in 2004 and 2005, tensions started growing over a drug distribution route in Chicago. On January 21, 2008, everything changed. It was Beltran Leyva's 37th birthday. Around 9 p.m., the Mexican Army Special Forces raided his house in Culiacán. They arrested Beltran Leyva and found $900,000 in cash, 11 luxury watches, 20 grenades, multiple rifles, and 40 bulletproof vests. Beltran Leyva and his brothers believed GUZMÁN had betrayed them. The Blood Alliance was over. War was declared. On May 8, 2008, less than 4 months after Beltran Leyva's arrest, the Beltran Leyva organization sent a message. Edgar Guzman Lopez, the 22-year-old son of JOAQUÍN Guzmán, was at a shopping center parking lot in Culiacán. Around 7:40 p.m., around 40 hitmen opened fire. They used AK-47 rifles. The gunfire lasted several minutes. Edgar Guzman Lopez and his 2 companions were shot and taken from life. Authorities recovered more than 500 bullet shell casings. Edgar was Guzman's favorite son. The cartel war exploded. Between May and July 2008, over 387 people were taken from life in Culiacán. 26 were police officers. The violence spread across Sinaloa. The Mexican government sent 2,000 additional troops. On December 16, 2009, Arturo Beltran Leyva was taken from life during a shootout with Mexican Marines. The cartel began to collapse. On August 24, 2012, a federal grand jury in New York indicted Beltran Leyva for conspiracy to distribute cocaine and methamphetamine. On November 15, 2014, Beltran Leyva was extradited to the United States. On February 5, 2016, he pleaded guilty. He admitted that from 1990 until January 2008, he was a leader of the Beltran Leyva organization, but he tried to minimize his role. On April 5, 2017, Judge Richard J. Loon sentenced Beltran Leyva to life in prison without parole. The judge also ordered him to forfeit $529 million. Judge Loon rejected the defense's request for a reduced sentence. He said Beltran Leyva spent decades at the head of a criminal organization that destroyed communities. In June 2022, Beltran Leyva was transferred to ADX Florence in Colorado. He spends 23 hours a day in solitary confinement in a 7 by 12-foot concrete cell. Solid concrete walls, desk, chair and bed. The only window is a 4-inch slit. He gets 1 hour of exercise per week. All phone calls are limited to 15 minutes per month. Beltran Leyva is now 53 or 54 years old. He will spend the rest of his life in that concrete cell. The Beltran-Leyva organization fractured after Arturo's demise in 2009. The cartel essentially dissolved. This is what happens when you choose the drug game. You make millions. You control entire regions. But eventually the walls close in. Your brothers get arrested or taken from life. Your allies betray you. The government extradites you. And you end up in a concrete box 23 hours a day for the rest of your life. Beltran-Leyva thought he was untouchable. He was wrong. Now he sits alone in the most isolated prison in America. No power, no empire, no family visits, just silence and concrete. He will die in that cell. Luis Felipe was born on May 11, 1961 in Havana, Cuba. In 1980 he arrived in Florida through the Mariel boat lift. He moved to Chicago and started committing offenses immediately. In 1981, Felipe caused his girlfriend to pass away. He was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 9 years. He was sent to Collins Correctional Facility in New York. In 1986, while serving his sentence, Felipe founded the New York chapter of the Latin Kings. He called it the Bloodline. That's where his nickname came from. King Blood. He declared himself Inca and Supreme Crown. He wrote a manifesto. He created ranks and rules. He recruited inmates across New York's prison system. By 1991, the Latin Kings had about 2,000 members. Felipe was arrested again for parole violations. In May 1993, he was transferred to Utica Correctional Facility. He kept running the Latin Kings from his cell. He wrote letters ordering people to pass away like he was ordering pizza. The New York Department of Corrections copied his letters but never read them closely. Between June 1993 and February 1994, 7 Latin Kings were taken from life under Felipe's orders. On May 25, 1993, William Cartagena attempted to cause Rafael Gonzalez to pass away, but shot Victor Harshman instead. Harshman passed away. In September 1993, Latin Kings lured Cartagena to an abandoned apartment in the Bronx. They choked him until he couldn't breathe, dismembered his body and removed his tattoo. Felipe also ordered Margie Carteron to pass away. They tried to burn down her apartment building on September 22, 1993. Carteron escaped but 2 neighbors suffered severe burns. On December 14, 1993, Isilender Navas was shot and taken from life under Felipe's termination on-site order. In January 1994, Ismael Rios was gunned down on the street. He passed away instantly. Felipe's letters were his downfall. Prison officials had been copying and storing all his mail. In 1994, a task force went through every letter. They found directives to cause death to 6 individuals. On June 21, 1994, federal authorities arrested Felipe and 19 other top Latin Kings leaders. He was charged with racketeering, incidents that caused death, attempted incidents, conspiracy, armed robbery, drug trafficking, and firearms violations. The trial began in 1995. More than 60 witnesses testified. Prosecutors presented letter after letter in Felipe's handwriting. Orders to terminate members. Directions for drug operations. Instructions for beatings and arsons. On November 7, 1995, the jury found Felipe guilty on all 18 counts. On February 14, 1997, Judge John S. Martin, Jr. sentenced Felipe to life imprisonment, plus 45 years. That's 250 years total. The judge imposed extraordinary conditions. Felipe must serve the entire sentence in solitary confinement. He can only write to his lawyer. He can only receive visits from his lawyer and close relatives. Felipe has no close relatives. Judge Martin said Felipe was a cold-blooded offender whose depraved behavior was not restrained by imprisonment. He said if Felipe could write to the outside world, he would continue to order offenses. Felipe tried to appeal. He wanted permission to submit artwork and poetry. He wanted to write to prisoner rights agencies. Every request was denied. On June 24, 1998, the Second Circuit upheld the sentence and conditions. Felipe is now 64 years old. He is imprisoned at ADX Florence in Colorado. He spends 23 hours a day in total isolation in a 7 by 12-foot concrete cell, solid concrete walls, desk, chair and bed. The only window is a 4-inch slit. He cannot write to anyone except his lawyer. He cannot receive phone calls except from his lawyer. He has no visitors, no family, no friends, just silence. Philip has been in solitary confinement for over 28 years. He will die in that concrete box. No communication, no contact, no freedom. This is what happens when you order people taken from life from a prison cell. The letters you write become your evidence, and the concrete walls close in forever. Caboni Savage was born on January 1, 1975 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He grew up in North Philadelphia and attended Frankford High School. He started boxing at the Front Street Gym. By the late 1990s, Savage was building a criminal empire. He controlled drug corners across North Philadelphia, dealing cocaine, crack cocaine, and heroin. He used beatings, kidnappings, threats, and incidents that caused death. If you owed money, you got hurt. If you snitched, you passed away. Savage made millions. On March 19, 1998, Savage caused Kenneth Lassiter to pass away near 8th and Butler Streets in Philadelphia. Authorities charged him, but witnesses refused to testify. The jury acquitted him. Less than 1 week later, federal authorities arrested Savage for drug trafficking. In 2004, he was convicted of 14 out of 16 charges, including racketeering, money laundering, witness intimidation, and drug trafficking. He was sentenced to 30 years. He was sent to the Federal Detention Center in Philadelphia. But even from behind bars, he kept running his organization. Between 2000 and 2004, Savage ordered multiple incidents. On September 6, 2000, Mansur Abdullah was taken from life. On February 26, 2003, Savage and enforcer Stephen Northington caused Barry Parker to pass away. On March 14, 2003, Eugene Coleman caused Tyrone Tolliver to pass away on Savage's orders. On March 1, 2004, Savage and Northington caused Tiberius Flowers to pass away. 6 individuals gone. But the worst came on October 9, 2004. Eugene Coleman had been arrested and agreed to cooperate against Savage. Savage found out. He called his sister Kidada Savage from his cell. He told her what needed to happen. Kidada recruited hitman Lamont Luss and Robert Merritt. She gave them the address of the Coleman family home in North Philadelphia. In the early morning hours around 5 a.m., Lebel S. and Merritt drove to the Coleman family row house. They fired warning shots first. Then Merritt threw 2 full gasoline cans with lit cloth fuses into the living room. The fire started instantly. Inside the house were 6 people. Marcella Coleman, age 54, Damir Jenkins, 15 months old, Kaja Nash, age 10, Tia J. Porchi, age 12, Sean Rodriguez, age 15, and Tamika Nash, age 34. All 6 individuals were asleep. None made it out. The fire department arrived 20 minutes later. All 6 people passed away from smoke inhalation and burns. 4 children, 2 adults, all gone because Savage wanted revenge. Federal authorities had bugged Savage's cell. When Savage heard Coleman was out for the funeral, he laughed. He said they should stop off and get him some barbecue sauce. Pour it on them burnt bitches. He was joking about 6 people burning to death. 4 of them were children. The trial began in February 2013. Because Savage had threatened witnesses and jurors, the jury remained anonymous and was escorted from an undisclosed location. The trial lasted 3 months. More than 60 witnesses testified. Lamont Luss admitted to committing 11 incidents that caused death, including the arson. Prosecutors played secretly recorded tapes. The jury heard Savage's own voice, joking about the individuals burned to death. On May 13, 2013, the jury found Savage guilty of 17 charges, 12 counts of incidents that caused death, 1 count of retaliating against a witness, conspiracy, everything. Kidada Savage was convicted of 6 counts related to the Coleman family firebombing. On June 13, 2013, the jury voted unanimously. Kebini Savage would be sentenced to death. The jury gave him 13 death sentences. It was the most death sentences given to one person in modern Philadelphia history. On December 23, 2024, President Joe Biden commuted the death sentences of 37 federal inmates. Savage was one of them. His 13 death sentences were reduced to life in prison without parole. The decision angered prosecutors and victims' families. Savage is now 49 years old. He is imprisoned at ADX Florence in Colorado. He spends 23 hours a day in solitary confinement in a 7 by 12-foot concrete cell. Solid concrete walls, desk, chair, and bed. The only window is a 4-inch slit. He gets 1 hour of exercise per week. He will spend the rest of his life in that concrete cell. No parole, no freedom, just walls. This is what happens when you build an empire on drugs and violence. You laugh about children burning to death. But eventually the walls close in. The concrete cell becomes your tomb. Savage destroyed entire families. Now he sits alone in the most isolated prison in America. He will die in that cell, and the world will be better for it. Omar Porti was born around 1969 in New York City. By age 17, he was committing armed robberies across the Bronx. On August 31, 1987, he was arrested facing 16 to 50 years. 2 weeks earlier, he claimed he witnessed Don Taylor shoot and cause Terrence Joyner to pass away. Porti agreed to testify. On April 25, 1989, based solely on Porti's testimony, Taylor was convicted and sentenced to 22.5 years to life. Porti pleaded guilty to just 2 to 6 years. He served less than 1 year. Years later, Porti recanted. He admitted he lied. In 2004, Taylor's conviction was vacated. Taylor was released after serving over 10 years for something he didn't do. Porti was arrested again on weapons charges. In 1992, he was sent to Rikers Island. The prison was dominated by Latin kings. African American inmates were outnumbered and targeted. On July 16, 1993, Porti and Leonard Mackenzie formed the United Blood Nation. They merged all independent African American gangs into one force. Porti became the leader. He was nicknamed OG Mac. The United Blood Nation spread fast. On March 12, 1996, Porti led an attack inside Rikers Island against rival Latin Kings members. He made a weapon by sharpening a Scrabble game piece. Porti and his crew cornered 3 Latin Kings inmates and slashed all 3. Blood was everywhere. Porti was charged but remained in custody. He was released on June 22, 1999. Porti rebuilt the United Blood Nation into a criminal empire. He divided the gang into sets including 1-8 Trey, Sex Money Murder, 9 Trey, Gangsters and Murderous Mad Dogs. He recruited gang members as young as 16. He ran drug trafficking operations moving cocaine, crack cocaine and heroin. He controlled prostitution rings and extorted businesses. He ordered countless acts of violence. By 2000, Porti was surrounded by armed bodyguards and wore bulletproof vests everywhere. On May 8, 2001, Porti and 14 other top United Blood Nation leaders were indicted on federal racketeering charges. The indictment detailed years of criminal activity, including conspiracy to cause death, incidents that caused death, drug trafficking, credit card fraud, firearms, extortion, and money laundering. More than 60 gang members were arrested. Prosecutors had recordings, financial records, and witness testimony. Porti's own gang members flipped. On August 27, 2002, the jury found Porti guilty on 10 counts. On April 14, 2003, he was sentenced to 50 years in federal prison. The judge said Porti created a criminal organization that destroyed communities and took countless lives. Porti was 34 years old. Porti is now approximately 56 years old. He is imprisoned at ADX Florence in Colorado. He spends 23 hours a day in a 7 by 12-foot concrete cell. Solid concrete walls, desk, chair and bed. A combination toilet and sink. a shower that turns on automatically 3 times a week. The only window is a 4-inch slit. He gets 1 hour of exercise per week. All phone calls are limited to 15 minutes per month. His earliest possible release date is 2052. He will be 83 years old. But with his 50-year sentence, he will likely never see freedom. The United Blood Nation still exists today in splintered factions. It has caused thousands of incidents that harmed or took lives. It has destroyed entire communities. And it all started with one man in a prison cell. Poor T built an empire on violence. Now he sits alone in a concrete box, 23 hours a day. No power, no empire, no freedom, just walls. This is what happens when you choose violence over everything else. The concrete cell is forever. James Marcello was born on December 13, 1943 in Chicago, Illinois. He worked as a city laborer until 1973. Nothing about him seemed dangerous. But his father Samuel Marcello was a mobster who disappeared in November 1973 and was found stuffed in a steel drum in July 1974. Violence was the family business. In October 1983, Marcello became a made member of the Chicago outfit. He served as driver and bodyguard for top bosses Joseph A. Iupa and Sam Carlizzi. By the 1990s, Marcello ran bookmaking, loan sharking, and extortion across western Cook County. In December 1992, federal authorities charged him with racketeering. He was convicted in December 1993 and sentenced to 12.5 years. He was released in November 2003. The worst offense came on June 14, 1986. Anthony "Tony the Ant" Spilotro and his brother Michael believed they were attending a meeting where Michael would become a made member. Marcello picked them up from a parking lot in Bensenville, Illinois. He drove them to a basement where about 10 to 15 Chicago outfit offenders were waiting. When Anthony entered, he realized what was happening. He asked if he could say a prayer. There was no answer. The men tackled both brothers. Michael's throat was cut. Both were beaten with fists, knees, and feet until their lungs filled with blood and they couldn't breathe. No weapons, just brutality. Both individuals passed away in that basement. Their bodies were stripped to their underwear, driven 60 miles away, and buried in a cornfield near Enos, Indiana. A farmer found them 9 days later, stacked on top of each other 5 feet underground. Why? Anthony Spilotro had been the Chicago outfit's man in Las Vegas for 15 years. He ran burglary rings and had an affair with a connected person's wife. When boss Joseph A. Iupa was sentenced to 28 years for casino skimming, he blamed Spilotro. The order came from the top. Marcello was the driver who brought them to their end. In April 2005, federal authorities launched Operation Family Secrets. Marcello and 13 others were indicted for 18 incidents that caused death. The case broke when Nicholas Calabrese turned informant and wore a wire. The trial began in summer 2007. More than 125 witnesses testified. On September 10, 2007, the jury found Marcello responsible for racketeering and the demise of the Spilotro brothers. On February 5, 2009, Judge James Zagel sentenced Marcello to life in prison. The judge said Marcello had self-control and judgment that other offenders didn't have. He said Marcello could have done better but chose not to. Marcello is now 81 years old. He is imprisoned at ADX Florence in Colorado. He spends 23 hours a day in a 7 by 12 foot concrete cell. Solid concrete walls, desk, chair, and bed. A combination toilet and sink. A shower that turns on automatically 3 times a week. The only window is a 4-inch slit angled so he can't see where he is. No sky, no horizon, just walls. He gets 1 hour of exercise per week in an individual cage. Phone calls are limited to 15 minutes per month. He will spend the rest of his life there. No parole, no escape. This is what happens when you choose this path. The concrete cell is forever. Peter Rolock was born around 1974 in the Soundview houses of the Bronx, New York. He grew up connected to heroin kingpin Nicky Barnes, By his late teens, Rolock earned his nickname. They called him Pistol Pete because he was quick to shoot. No questions, no warnings, just gunfire. In 1987, Rolock started Sex, Money, Murder. The gang became a sanctioned set of the Bloods. In 1993, various blood sets united as the East Coast United Blood Nation. Rolock was the leader of Sex, Money, Murder. His gang spread across the Bronx, Brooklyn, and other cities. By 1994, they had thousands of soldiers. By age 19, Rolock was a millionaire running cocaine and crack operations. On April 8, 1994, Rolock targeted Carlton Hines, a 23-year-old basketball star with a Syracuse University scholarship. Around 2:30 p.m., Hines was washing his car at Hand Car Wash on Boston Road with friend Carlos Mester. Rolock walked up and shot Hines in the back of the head. Hines was found with $5,000 in his pocket. Mester was wounded but survived and fled. On July 17, 1994, Rolock spotted Mester at a payphone near Westchester Avenue. He shot him in the back of the head. Mester passed away. The witness was gone. Rolock also caused Anthony Dunkley to pass away in June 1994. In late 1995, he was arrested at Grant's Tomb in Harlem carrying a gun. He served 8 months at Rikers Island, where he became a Blood. The Bloods gave him his own set. He beat the Carlton Hines case, but federal authorities indicted him for narcotics from a North Carolina bust, where he used a fake name and drugs were found in a secret compartment. Even from prison, Rolock kept running Sex, Money, Murder. Authorities found letters showing he directed his gang and ordered incidents. In April 1999, federal authorities indicted Rolock and 13 others for 28 counts, including 5 incidents that caused death. Facing execution, Rolock pleaded guilty in January 2000 to 6 counts. On November 8, 2000, Judge Miriam Goldman Cedar-Baum sentenced him to life in prison without parole plus 105 years. He was 27 years old. To protect his mother from charges, Rolock accepted a plea bargain with special administrative measures, restricting all communication indefinitely. Rolock is now approximately 51 years old. He is imprisoned at ADX Florence in Colorado, in H Unit, a special block for inmates under administrative measures. He spends 23 hours a day in a 7 by 12-foot concrete cell, solid concrete walls, desk, chair, and bed. A combination toilet and sink, a shower that turns on automatically. The only window is a 4-inch slit. He gets 1 phone call per month to close family. All letters are read and redacted by the FBI. He gets 1 hour of exercise per week in an individual cage. Former warden Robert Hood called ADX Florence worse than death. He said it's life after death. Rolock will spend the rest of his life in that concrete box. No parole, no escape. This is what happens when violence becomes your business. The concrete walls close in forever.